Natalie Hayes had always been the quiet one in her family, where her brother Christopher filled every room with his booming voice and unchecked confidence. Natalie preferred the background. She poured her energy into long hours at work, late-night studying, and the quiet hope that her parents might one day notice her sacrifices. That evening, the Hayes family gathered in the dining room for Edward's birthday. The chandelier cast golden light across the polished oak table, and Marianne fussed over the place settings as if royalty were arriving. Natalie had brought a modest gift, a leather-bound journal she knew her father would use, since he scribbled notes constantly. Christopher, on the other hand, strolled in late, carrying an expensive bottle of imported whiskey, purchased with money he hadn't earned. Dinner began with polite conversation, but it didn't take long for tension to rise. Christopher leaned back in his chair, flashing that smug grin Natalie had seen all her life. "You know, Dad," he said loudly, "sometimes I think Natalie only cares about herself. She never helps with family things. Always working, always busy. Honestly, she's kind of selfish." The words landed like a slap. Forks scraped against plates. Marianne's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing. Edward glanced at Christopher, then at Natalie, and sighed, as though the accusation held truth. Natalie felt the heat rush to her cheeks. She wanted to shout back, to remind them of all the times she had skipped outings to cover shifts at work, or how she had quietly paid bills when her parents struggled. Instead, her voice came out steady, but soft. "That isn't fair, Christopher." "You know I've been working to keep things together," Christopher smirked. "Excuses? You've always been too wrapped up in your own life to care about anyone else's." Her father shook his head slowly, disappointment clouding his eyes. "Maybe your brother has a point, Natalie. Family should come first." The room blurred around her. Her mother remained silent, her eyes fixed on her plate, unwilling to defend her daughter. Natalie sat frozen, every unspoken word burning her throat. At last, she pushed back her chair and rose from the table. "If that's truly how you see me," she whispered, "then maybe this family never knew me at all." She left the dining room, her footsteps echoing through the hall. Behind her, Christopher chuckled softly, the sound of victory. But Natalie didn't hear defeat in that laughter. She heard the spark of something else. The beginning of a fire she hadn't known was inside her. The night air outside the Hayes home was sharp, almost punishing. Natalie walked down the stone steps with her arms wrapped around herself, not from the cold but from the ache gnawing at her chest. The words selfish and family should come first looped in her head like a cruel refrain. She had given so much, her time, her youth, her strength, yet when it mattered, her parents had let Christopher's voice outweigh hers. A single accusation had erased years of sacrifice. Her phone buzzed. It was Lucas Bennett. He had been her friend since college, steady and dependable, someone who always noticed the things others ignored. "Nat, you left the dinner early. Everything all right?" She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "No, Lucas. Not at all. My brother called me selfish in front of everyone. And the worst part, my father agreed. My mother didn't say a word." There was a pause on the other end. Then Lucas's voice came firm, unshaken. "That's not who you are. They don't see the hours you work, the sacrifices you've made, but I do. And someday, they'll see it too, whether they want to or not." Natalie leaned against a lamppost, her eyes stinging. "I don't know if I can keep trying, Lucas. It's like nothing I do will ever be enough." "Then stop trying for them," Lucas said softly. "Start living for you." That night, Natalie lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. The betrayal at the dinner table replayed again and again. She thought of all the moments she had chosen responsibility over comfort, all the quiet ways she had carried the family's burdens without recognition. Christopher never sacrificed. He was the golden son, the loud one, the center of attention. And somehow, they loved him for it. Natalie clenched her fists under the blanket. Maybe they don't deserve my sacrifices anymore. Maybe it's time they see what selfish really looks like. For the first time, her hurt began to harden into something else, resolve. The following week, Natalie poured herself into her work. She spent long hours at the firm, arriving earlier than most, leaving after the halls were empty. Numbers, contracts, and research filled the silence her family had left behind. Work didn't judge her. Work rewarded her. Her supervisor, Mr. Richard Cole, noticed. He was an older man with sharp eyes but a kind heart. One evening, as Natalie organized stacks of reports, he lingered at her desk. "You've been burning the candle at both ends," he said. "Most people buckle under pressure. You sharpen?" Natalie managed a faint smile. "I guess work is easier than family." Richard tilted his head, studying her. Families often overlook the quiet ones. But mark my words, Natalie, those who are underestimated often rise the highest. Outside of work, Lucas remained her anchor. On Saturday afternoon, he invited her to a small cafe downtown. The aroma of fresh coffee and baked bread wrapped around them as they sat by the window. Lucas leaned forward. "So, what's next for you? Keep letting them walk over you, or finally take the reins?" Natalie stirred her drink slowly. "I don't want to waste my life trying to win their approval anymore. I want to build something that's mine, something no one can take away." Lucas smiled knowingly. "That's the Natalie I've been waiting to hear." Meanwhile, across town, Christopher basked in the glow of his parents' attention. He paraded his charm at dinners, bragged about connections he hadn't earned, and lived lavishly on money that wasn't truly his. Edward and Marianne nodded along, blind to the cracks forming in their son's facade. But Natalie saw those cracks. Every story Christopher told grew thinner, every boast more hollow. And deep inside, she knew it was only a matter of time before the truth surfaced. That night, as she walked home beneath the glow of street lamps, Natalie felt lighter than she had in years. For once, she wasn't chasing their approval. She was chasing her own future. And that, she realized, was the beginning of her revenge. Christopher Hayes thrived on attention. At family gatherings, he bragged about investments he didn't understand, about contacts who were more acquaintances than friends. His voice always carried the room, his parents beaming at every exaggerated word. But behind the glitter, things were unraveling. Christopher had borrowed money from acquaintances, promising quick returns. He spent recklessly, designer suits, sports cars, expensive nights out. To Edward and Marianne, it looked like success. To anyone who knew better, it was the hollow echo of a man balancing on lies. Natalie watched it unfold quietly. At first, it hurt to see her parents shower him with praise while she was invisible. But slowly, her hurt turned to clarity. His world was fragile, and one push could send it crumbling. At work, her supervisor, Richard Cole, handed her a major project. One Christopher could never dream of handling. A client's company needed restructuring, and Natalie's sharp analysis caught details others missed. After her presentation, Richard clasped her shoulder. "You've got vision," he said. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words stayed with her. Unlike her family, Richard saw her worth without hesitation. It was a reminder that validation could come from those who noticed effort, not just noise. One evening, Natalie met Lucas again at the cafe. She told him about Christopher's growing debts, the rumors of failed deals, and the way he still strutted like a king. Lucas leaned back, his brow raised. "Sounds like he's building his own downfall. You don't even need to fight him. Just stand back and let him collapse." Natalie shook her head. "No. If he falls alone, they'll still blame me somehow. I need the truth to be undeniable. When his mask slips, I want them to see who he always was, and who I always was." Lucas's eyes glinted with approval. "Then you wait, Natalie. Wait, and be ready that night." Walking home beneath the hum of the streetlights, Natalie felt a quiet confidence growing. Christopher's empire was a house of cards, and when it fell, she would no longer be the forgotten daughter, she would be the one left standing. The first cracks showed at a family gathering one Sunday afternoon. Relatives had filled the Hayes' living room, balancing glasses of wine and plates of hors d'oeuvres. Christopher, as always, took the spotlight, boasting about a major investment that was about to make him a millionaire. "Just a matter of weeks," he said, with his signature grin. "You'll all see. Big players trust me with their money now," but Natalie noticed the flicker of unease in his eyes. She had learned to read people the way she read financial reports, and Christopher's confidence was thinner than glass. Later that evening, when most guests had gone, Natalie overheard hushed voices near the kitchen. Two of Christopher's so-called partners confronted him, their tones sharp. "You said the money was secured," one hissed. Christopher laughed nervously. "It is. Just a small delay, that's all." But his words didn't match his trembling hands. At work, Natalie thrived. Richard Cole praised her for closing a complicated deal, and her name began circulating in rooms she once thought unreachable. The contrast between her quiet rise and her brother's faltering facade grew clearer by the day. Lucas noticed it too. Over dinner one evening, he leaned across the table. "Every step you take forward makes his shadow smaller. You're not just surviving anymore, Natalie. You're outgrowing them." She wanted to believe him. For the first time, she almost did. Weeks passed, and Christopher's empire began to wobble. Calls came late at night, creditors growing impatient. He masked the panic with louder boasts and grander promises, but whispers spread. People started to doubt the golden sun. And through it all, Natalie stayed silent, watching. She didn't need to expose him. His own arrogance was peeling back the mask piece by piece. But she knew her moment was coming. When the collapse arrived, she wouldn't just stand by. She would be ready to claim what had always been hers: respect, dignity, and truth. It started with whispers, then grew into headlines. Christopher Hayes' guaranteed investments had failed. Angry creditors demanded repayment. Former partners called him a fraud behind closed doors. In a matter of weeks, the Golden Sun's reputation dimmed. Though inside the Hayes home, Edward and Marianne still clung to denial. "He just needs time," Marianne insisted over dinner. Christopher has always been resourceful, but Natalie saw the truth in her father's tired eyes. Edward knew, he just couldn't admit it. Meanwhile, Natalie's life moved in the opposite direction. At the firm, her project saved a client from near collapse. The board acknowledged her by name, and Richard Cole introduced her to executives who once overlooked her entirely. "You've got a rare gift," Richard told her. "You don't shout to be seen. You let results speak for you. That's real leadership." For the first time, Natalie felt validation she hadn't known she craved. Not from her parents, not even from her brother, but from the undeniable weight of her own achievements. Lucas noticed the change too. One evening, as they walked along the riverfront, he smiled at her. "You're different now. Stronger. I don't hear the girl who wanted their approval anymore. I hear a woman who doesn't need it." Natalie paused, the city lights reflecting in the water. "Maybe I don't, but I still want the truth to come out. I want them to see who Christopher really is, and who I've always been." Lucas's expression hardened with quiet conviction. "And they will." "He's crumbling, Natalie. All you have to do is stand tall." The days ahead proved him right. Calls poured into the Hayes house, collectors demanding answers. Christopher avoided them, his smile strained, his voice brittle. Marianne still defended him, but Edward's silence grew heavier, a weight pressing on every conversation. And Natalie? She waited, calm, patient. For once she wasn't the overlooked daughter. She was the storm on the horizon. The Hayes house no longer rang with Christopher's laughter. Instead, the air was thick with tension. Phones ringing off the hook, unanswered messages piling high. Creditors had stopped being patient. Threats replaced polite reminders. One evening, Natalie returned for a family dinner, more out of obligation than desire. The table felt smaller, darker. Edward sat stiffly, his fork untouched. Marianne hovered nervously, her smile brittle, and Christopher, once the king of every room, looked gaunt, his shirt wrinkled, his confidence shattered. Midway through the meal, his facade broke. He slammed his glass down, liquid spilling across the table. "I just need more time," he shouted. "Why doesn't anyone understand everything was supposed to work?" Marianne flinched. Edward said nothing. Silence filled the space until Natalie finally spoke, her voice calm but cutting. "You didn't need more time, Christopher. You needed honesty. Instead, you chose arrogance." His head snapped toward her, eyes wild. "This is your fault. You've always been jealous. You've always wanted me to fail." Natalie held his gaze. "I didn't want you to fail. I just stopped protecting you from yourself." The words hung in the air. For the first time, Edward didn't look at Natalie with disappointment. Instead, his weary eyes flickered with something closer to recognition. Marianne remained frozen, torn between the son she adored and the daughter she had ignored. Christopher pushed back his chair violently, storming out of the room. The door slammed, rattling the walls. Natalie sat in the silence that followed, her heart beat steady. For years she had been the background character in her family's story. But now, with Christopher unraveling, the silence was no longer a punishment. It was power. Later that night, Lucas called. She told him everything. He listened, then said quietly, "It's happening, Nat. The truth is breaking through. Don't back down now. You've waited your whole life for this moment." Natalie looked out her apartment window, the city glowing beneath her. For the first time, she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Her brother was breaking. Her family was waking up. And she was just getting started. It didn't take long for Christopher's troubles to spill beyond the walls of the Hayes home. By the end of the month, whispers became headlines. Local papers printed bold titles. "Businessman Christopher Hayes, under fire for failed investments." Names of angry creditors filled the pages. Lawsuits loomed. At the office, colleagues snickered over the news. Some whispered with pity, others with schadenfreude. Natalie walked past them, her head held high. She didn't gloat, but deep inside, she felt the sharp contrast. Her steady rise against her brother's unraveling spectacle. Her supervisor, Richard Cole, called her into his office that afternoon. "I heard about your brother," he said gently. "But Natalie, your work here has been nothing short of exemplary. Don't let his shadow define you. Keep building your own," she nodded, grateful. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. I think I finally understand that my worth isn't tied to them anymore." That weekend, Natalie met Lucas at a quiet restaurant. He slid a folded newspaper across the table. Christopher's face stared back from the front page, pale and frantic. Lucas raised a brow. "He's finished, Nat. Everyone sees it now." Natalie traced the headline with her finger, her chest tight but steady. "For years, he called me selfish." They all believed it. Now the truth is right there for the world to see. Lucas leaned closer, his voice low. "And you? You're proving them all wrong at the Hayes house." The mood was different. Marianne no longer spoke with her usual cheer. Edward sat for hours in silence, the weight of denial crushing him. For the first time, when Natalie entered, no one dismissed her presence. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The silence in the room told her everything. They knew now. Christopher's fall was complete, and with it, the illusion of his golden crown had shattered. That night, as Natalie walked home beneath the city lights, she felt a calm she had never known before. Her revenge wasn't in his downfall alone. It was in the simple truth that she had risen while he destroyed himself. And now everyone could see it. The Hayes home felt unfamiliar the next time Natalie walked through its doors. Gone was the constant noise of Christopher's laughter and Marianne's doting chatter. The air was heavy, the silence thick. Edward sat in his armchair, a newspaper folded in his lap. The front page carried his son's disgrace for all to see. Marianne hovered in the kitchen, her hands busy but her face pale. Natalie stood in the doorway, unsure if she should even speak. But before she could turn away, her father lifted his head. "Sit down, Natalie," Edward said quietly. She obeyed, her heart steady. For a long moment, he said nothing, just studied her as though seeing her for the first time. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I should have listened to you. All those times you worked late, helped without asking for thanks. I called you selfish when you were the opposite." Marianne stepped in then, her eyes rimmed with red. "We wanted to believe in Christopher. He was so bright, so full of charm. It blinded us, and we failed you." Natalie absorbed their words. But she didn't rush to comfort them. She had waited years for this acknowledgement, and she let the silence stretch. At last, she spoke, her voice calm. "You believed what you wanted to believe, but the truth doesn't disappear because you ignore it. Christopher isn't the only one who has to live with the consequences. You do too." Her words hung in the air, not cruel, not forgiving, simply true. Later that evening, Lucas called to check on her. She told him everything, her tone measured. "They're starting to see it now," she said, "but it doesn't change the years I was invisible to them." Lucas's voice was gentle. "No, it doesn't. But Natalie, you're not invisible anymore. You're undeniable." For the first time, Natalie didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. She felt like the center of the story. The room had shifted, and she was no longer asking for respect. She was commanding it. Weeks turned into months, and the scandal around Christopher only deepened. Creditors seized assets, business partners cut ties, and his once boastful voice grew quiet. The golden boy of the Hayes family had become a cautionary tale. Natalie, meanwhile, flourished. Her work earned her a promotion at the firm, and her name carried weight in rooms where she was once invisible. Clients requested her personally, impressed by her precision and calm under pressure. Even Richard Cole, seasoned and steady, admitted, "Natalie, you're not just one of the best employees I've had. You're a leader in the making." Her personal life blossomed too. Lucas remained by her side, his encouragement turning into something deeper, steadier. He didn't see her as selfish, overlooked, or second best. He saw her as Natalie, strong, capable, and worthy of respect. One evening, her parents invited her back to the house. She almost refused, but curiosity carried her to the familiar door. The dining table looked the same, yet everything felt different. Edward spoke first, his voice weary but sincere. "Natalie, we know we wronged you. We believed Christopher's charm, and we ignored your strength. We called you selfish when you were the one holding us together. We can't undo the past, but we are proud of the woman you've become." Marianne nodded, her hands trembling. "I wish I had defended you when you needed me most. You deserved better from us." Natalie listened quietly, her heart steady. For years she had longed to hear those words. Now that they came, she realized she no longer needed them. Her worth had never belonged to their approval. She smiled faintly, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "I don't need apologies. What I needed was to stop living for your approval, and I've done that. I'm stronger now, because you forced me to be." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with truths finally spoken. As she left the house that night, the air felt lighter, freer. She didn't carry the weight of being unseen anymore. She had built her own life, her own success, her own respect. Her revenge was not in destroying them, but in proving them wrong every single day she thrived. Natalie Hayes had been called selfish, but in the end, she was the one who gave everything and won it all back in the sweetest way possible.